there's one song on the album that's the live vocal, and then the rest are all the vocals on the album. You can chart how drunk I'm getting. True.
Oh, that's great.
When I listen to my first solo album, I just get like, oh God, what a hangover that was. Oh, Jesus. But on the other hand, I'd heard worse.
Dystopia Tonight. Dystopia Tonight.
It's coming out. What's going on, man?
Good evening, gentlemen.
How are you?
Good evening.
I'm all right. The book's coming out in September.
September, damn it. All right.
Nice.
Maybe not I was hoping a couple months.
Yeah, it was supposed to be out in May, but because of the pandemic and the backlog,
Yeah.
there was a lack of printing paper for books.
It's amazing how many things are backed up from the pandemic, right? I went to go order the SM58 mic. They're like, you could put a deposit on it. It'll be in February.
Ridiculous.
I just bought 4 of them. I went to 3 different stores, but
you were able to find them? I couldn't find a cordless.
Yeah.
You have to figure out what time you tried to order one and the time you bought those 4, because you may be the reason for his delay. We just had Dave Alvin in here and he bought up the rest of them. That was it. He couldn't get any more. Yeah, it's rough, dude. It's absolutely rough. I feel like I've called stores that I know were shitty before the pandemic hit, and they're using the pandemic as an excuse. And I'm just like, you guys fucking sucked long before 2019. Don't tell me. That's ridiculous. A paper shortage, though. That's fucking wild. I didn't think we were going to go into that.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah, I know. I've ordered.
The book comes out in September.
Oh, that's great though, dude. It looks amazing, man. I can't wait to read it. I always wonder, like, at a certain point, like, is it just something that you felt compelled to do? Somebody suggested, or were you like, I need to get this shit down because we're not doing anything?
Somebody was crazy enough to ask me to do it.
Oh, nice.
It really. When I was a kid, I studied writing.
Nice.
In my checkered college career, and I had some great teachers, and that's really how I learned how to write songs. And I had some very strict writing teachers who, in the poetry classes, taught us you had to write sonnets, you had to write in blank verse, you had to write, blah blah blah. You had to rhyme, you had to learn all the various metrical forms. Most of it I've forgotten, but it took me from being a guy that occasionally sat down and wrote free verse that was just like to being I can kind of when my brother and I started the Blasters, we just wanted to play old Howlin' Wolf songs and Carl Perkins songs and Barry songs, and but then we realized if we were going to get anywhere, we had to have original songs, and so at one band rehearsal, my brother said, next week everybody brings in 3 songs.
Cool.
And I was the only idiot that brought in 3 songs. And so I became a songwriter. So I put out.
That's a great way to figure out who's going to be the writer in a new band, though. It's like, all right, everybody do this assignment, and the only one that comes in with it, like, you're it, dude.
Yeah, you're a chump.
Yeah.
So over the years, before even then, I'd been in some small press poetry books and put out one myself, and then over the years, I did a book back in the '90s called "Any Rough Times Are Now Behind You," that was put out by this sort of punk rock press down in San Diego.
Nice.
That did really well. But the weird thing about books is, I'm a fan of real writers,
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's only a few rock and rollers that are real writers, And I
Right.
don't know if I qualify. Maybe at times some of my songs do.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Leonard Cohen,
Mm,
real writer. you know,
right.
And I'll stack my best songs against his worst.
Okay. Okay.
You
But
know,
is that see? I find that to be very humbling and very modest of you, though, because I think if you talk to anybody else about your work, they hold it in very high regard.
well, a lot of people drink.
That's the best answer ever.
I'm proud of what I do.
Good.
I don't think I suck at it.
No,
I'm
but
just
here's a
the idea of a book is kind of scary.
yeah,
Books mean John Updike.
right.
Books mean
Great author. Yeah,
Flannery O'Connor. They're books.
yeah.
And and I do think that musical lyrics can be poetry.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Not all of them,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of some of them, yeah.
Yeah.
And so what this book is, it's a lot of my lyrics that are the ones that I think can stand up outside of the music.
Right.
But it's also a lot of it's all stuff I wrote. All the things in it are about music or musicians or people that were in the music scene.
Sweet.
But I wrote them for some are obituaries that I wrote for newspapers. Some are essays that I've written for, reissue albums of people like Ray Charles and Frank Zappa and people like that, or Merle Haggard.
Nice.
And so just put them all into one book because I am technically working on a memoir.
Oh, great.
Wow.
The same publisher that was crazy enough to ask me to do this.
Yeah.
To do that.
Well, I love the concept for this book because I love that you're doing a memoir too. Because that was going to be my next question. I was going to ask you if you're actually doing something about a little bit more expansive. But this is a great idea to have like a combination of kind of a little bit of all your work in there and your experiences, and because it's hard if you're a fan of an artist. Sometimes it's really hard to find their work, even something as simple as like trying to find the actual lyrics from an album or from a thing. It can be really hard to find, and I kind of like that you've compiled a whole thing into a book.
Yeah, because they tie in, like some of them tie into poems that I'd written like maybe 2-3 years before, and then 2-3 years later I realized, oh, that could be a song.
Yeah.
So there's some of those in there, that kind of stuff. The song lyric versus the poem.
Right.
You be the judge.
Yeah.
And what's fun, my poetry is actually, after studying poetic forms when I was in college, as soon as I got out of college, I started writing songs. My poetry is almost newspaper. It's almost journalism.
Wow.
It's sort of the teachers I had. That's kind of how they wrote, and that's kind of taught me to write. I had some teachers a great teacher named Gerald Laughlin, and he and Charles Bukowski were like close friends. And
no way.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that is so fucking cool. Did he tell you stories about Bukowski?
Oh yeah, sure.
Wow. Oh my God.
I saw Bukowski read back in the 70s, man.
Really?
Yeah. First time I saw him read, which was the best time, was before he, became Charles Bukowski.
Yeah.
He was reading at this little bar in Long Beach, California, called the, for lack of a better term, it was a beatnik bar, and a surfer beatnik bar called the West Coast Bodega.
Ooh.
And Bukowski would go in there like on Thursday nights and just get up on, almost like open mic, except it would be Charles Bukowski doing poetry. Yeah. And so that's the first time I saw him. That was about 1974.
Wow.
75 maybe.
He's incredible, man.
Yeah. He was that version of Bukowski was amazing.
Yeah.
I spent my childhood sneaking into blues bars and jazz bars as a little kid.
Wow.
And that was one of the closest white guys that was ever as cool
Right.
as the old black bluesman. You know,
Right.
this thing, just about a white guy could get.
His life was incredibly interesting. And I mean, he came up with a lot of it's funny when you read about how he kind of came up and who he was and what got him directly into writing and stuff like that. I kind of can see what some of the things he was feeling when he was writing, why, you know what I mean? Like you can kind of piece shit together and you're like, oh, okay, this is obviously from this part of his life. This is from this experiences that he had, which is kind of funny because it's hard to do that sometimes.
Yeah. And the thing that he had that a lot of both his detractors and his idolaters confused is he did have that little spark of genius.
Yes.
And that's why he could write about some things that he wrote about, and then at the end of the poem or the end of the story, there'd be this little twist.
Yeah.
That would mark, oh, this guy's a real fucking poet.
Right.
And were a lot of his copiers, because he had guys that, I'm trying to make this nice.
Don't worry about it. Go for it.
I may have been one myself in my youth. They were going for the image as opposed to the poetry.
Yes.
And when you read his, the stuff that he wrote before he passed away, because a lot of the middle stuff I don't care for. He was playing up the image of Charles Bukowski.
Absolutely.
If you add all the poems together, there was not that many nights in his life for him to get drunk.
Yes, exactly.
Women in the world for him to have slept with.
Right.
A lot of it was, he was creating this larger than life image, which is great, but a lot of his followers tried to follow that and not follow the poetry.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I saw Jimi Hendrix. I was lucky to see when I was 12 and a half or so.
Wow.
Mom drove me and a couple of my friends 2 times to see Jimi Hendrix live. Nice. And with the exception of 1 or 2 little things here and there, I've never tried to be Jimi Hendrix. Never tried to play like Jimi Hendrix. I've never tried to, dress like Jimi Hendrix, act like Jimi Hendrix. But in the same way I wanted to be the great bluesman Lightnin' Hopkins, I realized right away, well, I never can, and I never can be Jimi Hendrix. I can take elements of that, and in like the case of Hendrix, it was you never knew what he was going to do.
Right.
My big boredom with pop music today is it's so choreographed.
Yep.
These are choreographed and all. I'm really sick of robotic. Yeah, and I'm sick of even in rock bands, it's all choreographed as to, okay, this is your guitar solo. You stand here because we got the light and it's going to hit you there, and you're going to for 18 bars, and then you're going to back up, and then the light's going to go on the lead singer, and that's fine. It's showbiz. It's Broadway.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not, to me, that's not rock and roll. And with Jimi Hendrix, You're going to go over here now, and you're going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
You're going to go over here, and he's going to play this now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what he's going to do.
Right.
And, in the same way, you go see Bob Dylan, you have no idea what you're going to get.
Absolutely. Yeah. Every time it's something different.
And so you try to take that elements of that in my career, not equating myself with them, but that's kind of what I learned from guys like that was, early on, the Blasters, when we started, we were basically a blues R&B band. Mm-hmm. And then because of our pompadours and leather jackets and this and the other, we got like, oh, they're a rockabilly band, or they're a cowpunk band, or they're this or they're that.
Right.
And so throughout my career, not that I don't distance myself from that at all, but on the other hand, that's not all. I just go and do whatever I want. I mean, the last record I made was a psychedelic record. A lot of people liked and a lot of people didn't. So,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, do you feel like, how much of the audience, so to speak, do you take into your own work? I mean, do you just go, look, I'm going to do what makes me happy. If they dig it, if they like it, that's great. And that's it. Like it is. I feel like that's the
I didn't need to make a plug on your show.
You can do whatever you want, man. But yeah, is it like that? Because here, you know what I was going to ask you too about this book, though. Did you find new connections with your work and with stuff and with the writing that you had done as you were putting this all together?
Not really, because I carry all the songs with me.
Oh, nice.
They're all up here, and they're all here. Even the ones people think that I don't think about.
Right.
There were, I wrote them all, and I'm a slow writer, very slow songwriter, and so I spend months on songs. And with a few exceptions, and they're all etched in my brain. So
right.
No, I'm pretty well aware, of how everything fits.
Sure. Together. That's awesome. How long would you say was it like? Because you were talking about, you never really tried to be like Jimi Hendrix, or you did, but you knew you were never going to be them or whatever. We all kind of emulate people when we start out. How long would you say in your career did you realize who you were? On stage, off stage, when you were writing? Like, when did you find your self identity? Really not until around 1994. Okay.
To be honest.
No.
I did an album called King of California that was a more or less acoustic album.
Mm-hmm.
And that was
love that album.
Oh, thanks. And so do I. But that was the first time I really learned how to sing.
Okay.
My own songs. I had never sung in my life, and again, what would happen, 15 years before in the Blasters, was I would write a song, we'd go to rehearsal, I'd play the song, band would either say it sucks, we're not going to play it, or they'd say, okay, play it again, and then you play it again and again and again, and so I'd sing it about 8 times. And then my brother Phil, who was a brilliant fucking vocalist, would start singing it.
Right.
That was it. I'd never sang the song again,
Wow.
It was like, okay, it's yours now, Phil. And so when I went solo, if you want to call it that, when I stumbled into a solo career, the first solo record I made, I would love to reissue it without the vocals. I would love to. It was a great band. I had a great band.
Yeah.
Just the tracks, that's all you need. And because the producer, my dear friend Steve Berlin, he and the engineer figured to get over my shyness as a singer, let's get him drunk on vodka and beer and do all the vocals in one night.
Oh my God.
There's one song on the album that's the live vocal, and then the rest are all the vocals on the album. You can chart how drunk I'm getting.
Oh, that's great.
When I listen to my first solo album, I just get like, oh God, what a hangover that was. Oh, Jesus. But on the other hand, I'd heard worse. I heard worse singers. Hell, they got careers. Why not?
Absolutely. Me? Yeah.
I'm going to name drop here. It's a complicated story that I'll make really simple. I wrote a song called 4th of July, and there was Nick Lowe, the great producer, songwriter, singer, everything, was going to produce this album. I'd already left the Blasters, but I was going to write the songs for a Blasters album because they were my hometown guys I grew up with.
Yeah.
I was already in X, but I said, okay, I'll write you some songs. But then one of the reasons I left the Blasters was I had written all the songs that my brother and I could share,
Yeah.
And, if you're writing songs for Streisand, you're going to sit down and say, okay, what do me and Barbra Streisand have in common?
Right.
And then you're going to figure it out, and then you write a song, and I'd done that with my brother for 3 albums, and I kind of might have written ourselves out of here, Phil.
Yeah.
And so I just decided, okay, I'll write songs for me, and maybe Phil can sing. And so Nick Lowe, like I said, was on board to produce this thing. And so I go to Nick's, he flew out from London, and I go to his hotel room and I play him 4th of July. And the first thing he says is, your brother can't sing that song. What do you mean? He's got to. I just wrote it for them. And he said, oh, no, he's a rhythm and blues singer. That's not a rhythm and blues song. Then I was arguing and said, yes, it is. I'm trying to write a Curtis Mayfield song. It's going, we're going back and forth. And then Nick finally says, "That's your song. You have to sing it. That song's written for your voice." And I said, "But he said, I'll tell you what, we'll go in the studio and cut you singing it." And I was like, "But Nick, I don't sing." And Nick Lowe gave me the greatest bit of career advice. He said, "Well, I can't either, but I've made a wonderful career at it." And that's been, through all the ups and downs of my professional career. I always go back to Nick Lowe just saying, "Well, I can't either, but."
Yeah,
that's the best, man. When you get advice from somebody, especially somebody you respect, who like gives you a little inside info, and they're like, "Neither can I, but fuck it, go it anyway."
Yeah.
That's the best. That's always the best advice I got doing stand up. Somebody once told me, mediocrity inspires. And I was just like, I didn't quite understand. I'm like, what do you mean? And then I would like watch somebody on a late night set kind of just fucking be kind of okay. And you're like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that. That's fine. How much is he making? Holy shit. That's not
bad. I'm more of the I understand. I'm more of the I get inspired, like terribleness or shit I find shit inspirational. Like I'll read somebody's poem or whatever, or song, and I'll just go, "Oh my God." I've got 2 or 3 songs of mine that I'm a little like,
oh, I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you think that's you being too critical?
No.
Okay.
Their songs really no one knows. One of which has never been released. That will never be released, that I wrote for the Blasters, that we recorded with the Blasters, and it is the absolute worst song.
Wow.
By anyone, anywhere. But sometimes I'll hear somebody's poem or song or something, and let's go.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I could do that. Yeah. Greatness can be inspirational, and mediocrity can, and just flat out being terrible can be inspirational.
Absolutely.
Right.
No, I agree. And what was when you were going? Because you grew up in Downey, California, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that was the last place I lived before I left California.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, I wound up. Because when I first moved out to California, I lived in Studio City.
When?
It was end of 2016,
beginning
of 2017. God. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yep. And I lived, because when I first moved out to California, I lived in Studio City. What'd you say?
Was a woman involved?
In the beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I lived in Studio City. Then I lived in Universal City. Then I lived in my car for 2 days. That was fun. Everybody's got one of those stories where they stay in your car. I didn't really live in it, but I did sleep in it for a couple days, and underneath the Ralph's parking garage. Because I was like, this seems safe. And then and then I lived in San Clemente for a little bit I crashed on my cousin's couch out there. And then, but it was too far to drive from to keep going back from LA. And then I went to a real estate person, and I was like, I don't know where to go. Like, you got to find some. I literally was like, I had no idea where the fuck to go. And my cousin was just newly married, and his wife was kind of like, you need to get the fuck out. It's and I was like, that seems about fair. Because we were, but then I went to her, and she was just like, oh, she's like, I don't have any place you can afford, because I was broke. Flat fucking broke. And then she was like, but I know a guy, which is never a good sign. But she was like, I know a guy in Downey. And I didn't know and I was just like, I was like, oh, Karen Carpenter, I think is from Downey. That was all I knew at the time. And I was just like, that sounds great. And then I lived there, and I didn't realize it was the hottest fucking place. And he had no fucking AC in whatever you guys call, whatever they called I don't even know what it was. I forget what they fucking called it. But I was like, sir, can you please turn the AC on? And he's like, no, we have a fan. And I was just like, a fan, and I'm like,
that's a true Downey guy right there.
Yes, dude, this guy was like pure Downey. He would. Oh, what the fuck was his name? I can't think of his name.
I mean, I hadn't lived in Downey since 1980, but you never.
Oh, okay. You never know. Yeah. Yeah. Apparently his dad lived there before him. His mom lived in a little house in the back. Like he had bought like this land, so he had his own house.
Jack.
What'd you say?
Sheila and Jack. Yeah, I remember
Yeah. He was
yeah.
he was an interesting dude. He one day ran out into the backyard. All I know is I had my room door open, which I rarely ever did, but I saw him dart through the house with a gun, fire it into the sky, and I was just like, what the fuck was that? And he was just like, squirrels, man. I was just like,
Wait,
okay.
I'm going to give you initials. Was his initials DC?
Ooh, I don't. Maybe I don't know. I have to look him up. Why?
WE.
WE? No, I don't think so.
Okay.
DCWE. I'll have to look it up.
I'm just thinking of the guys that I still know in Downey that are like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He belonged to. I performed at his lodge, which more of an indoctrination, by the way. Like it was me doing stand up, and it was a good time. Everybody had a good time, but like in back of the biggest fucking American flag you've ever seen in your life, and all men.
And the Hulk's on Firestone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. That was it. Yeah. Not a bad. And I used to ride I don't know why I'm telling you about my life. I used to. I don't know how, I was literally getting somewhere with the Downey thing, and then I'm like, and by the way, because I used to ride down the river. Where the
river, yeah.
Yeah. So I used to ride my bike all the way down there to like 30 something miles.
Yeah.
But no one told me there were like real cowboys over there. So I'm riding my bike, and all of a sudden on the left-hand side of me, there's just a fucking horse. And I'm just like, cool. And then there's a guy behind him trying to get his horse. And I was just like, do you want me to stop? But it was just cool. Like this horse was just riding alongside me when I was riding my bike. It was wild. Coyotes.
Yeah, all right. So that's the LA River. You're going to get more cowboys on it. So I know those. I don't know those guys personally, but I know.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Downey was the kind of place when I was a little kid in the 50s, when I was like, I was born in 55. It was still semi-rural, and I have memories of people riding horses on the street, and of course we had orange groves everywhere. And then one day in about the mid 60s, you woke up and it was all gone.
Oh wow!
And but it still had elements of that, The piano player for the Blasters was a guy named Gene Taylor, and where Gene lived, it's now the 605 freeway. But when he was a kid, he lived on a farm, and it was a citrus farm, and it was he lived with his grandmother, and it was an old wooden farmhouse from the 19th century. Some orange trees, lemon trees, avocados, peach, whatever. Yeah. And so we had a lot of that growing up, and there was also that filtered into a lot of my imagery in my music. People go to Downey now and they're like, huh? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Now it's more famous as the home of the world's ugliest McMansions.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that was somebody else. Someone that too. It was a hard time getting people to come back to Downey. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like anytime I was performing anywhere else, and I'm like, I live in Downey. If you want to come, and they were like, we're good.
Yeah. It's the southeast side of Los Angeles County is its own world.
Yeah, it was.
It was a blue collar world. Even the nicest parts of it.
Yes.
Were still blue collar nice,
Yeah.
Like the carpenter's house.
Mm-hmm.
That was like sort of like the Downey version of Graceland,
The way to describe it, yeah.
Lived anywhere,
Right.
Maybe if she would have got out of Downey, psychologically, I don't know. But so the southeast side, Pico Rivera, Bellflower, Bell Gardens, Bell, Cudahy, Maywood, Southgate, Compton, Linwood, Paramount, North Long Beach. I say Pico Rivera, Whittier,
Yep.
That area, all that area down there, it's a different world. And like with the Blasters, when we were trying to get gigs in the early days, we used to call it the wall of the Harbor Freeway, because the harbor kind of separates the west side of LA from the east side of LA.
Right.
And I'll be, it was extremely, extremely difficult to get over that wall and get gigs at the Whiskey A Go-Go or the Starwood or places like that were groovy happening. Places, Madame Wong's, places like that in those days.
Right.
Because we were, I was the guy that was the booking agent, or I would take the little cassette tape. We got a band and we play rockabilly and blues and stuff, and we're from Downey, nobody cool really had ever come from Downey, and so it was, years later, after we were established on the scene and all that, we helped out this group of friends of ours named Los Lobos, because they had the same problem. They were from the side and they couldn't get over the great wall of the Harbor Freeway, because the west of LA, as you know, having lived in both, having lived in Studio City and Downey, it's two different worlds, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely. I love Los Lobos, by the way. They're great.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah, that's it. Was your family? I mean, obviously it's you and your brother, but was anybody else in the entertainment industry musically inclined when you were growing up?
Well, depends on how much my dad drank. It really did. And, my old man was my mom was a fourth generation Californian, so I'm a fifth generation. And my old man, though, was from South Bend, Indiana. He was a Polish kid. First line, he was born in South Bend in 1916. In the, they had all the neighborhoods. It'd be Poles here, Czechs here, Germans here, blacks here, Jews here. And so his first language is Polish, and he, basically an immigrant kid. And he rode the rails out to California in the Depression.
Wow.
And so I was brought up with that, as well as my mother's, sort of California-centric view of the world. And I forget what the question was.
Oh, but it was, I was asking if anybody was musically inclined in your family.
Before he came out to California, there used to be a show on the radio in the 30s called the Major Bowes Talent Show. And Major Bowes was the forebearer of the Ted Mack Amateur Hour, which of course is the predecessor of America's Got Talent or American Idol, or those kind of dubious shows.
Sure.
And my old man, though, he and three guys in South Bend had a group that they called the Ramblin' Boys.
Ooh.
They were a vocal quartet. And so my old man they won. They didn't win first, but they would win second consistently on. And what Major Bowes would do, similar thing as American Idol, the racket they had going, was they would then put the people from their show out on the vaudeville circuit.
Okay.
And so my old man was 3 months on the road with the Ramblin' Boys in 1932. And
wow.
Throughout my musical career, my old man,
that is so fucking cool.
Pretty tough guy. And are you making any money? And you're like, well, let me tell you what's going to break up your band. Well, back in the Ramblin' Boys, our bass player, Paul Szysnavich, he had a girlfriend. And then he would say, my 3 months on the road. That's all I know about the music industry. You make any? Yeah, I'm doing all right.
That's so great. So then they were kind of cool with you doing your own thing, right?
Yeah. Well, my mom more so than my dad. I think my dad would have preferred if I would have gotten a college degree and become a history professor or something. Or he would have been happy if I would have been a used car salesman, actually. But, it was when they started doing, I remember it was a big moment in my life. It was in the 90s when, they'd already been destroying, labor unions and this and the other. And then they started, so, if you had a blue collar job, you weren't sure if you were ever going to have the longevity that your father had or your grandfather had. And then you show them suddenly. Now they figured out, we can get rid of the white collar guys too, and so they started doing that. And I'll never forget. It was a big moment sitting at my dad's kitchen table in Downey, and my old man saying, you know, David, you may have gotten to the right bracket.
That's great.
You can't trust these bastards at all. They'll get rid of everybody. Thanks, Dad. Finally, slap up.
Yes.
My mom had been you know, she grew up in an area called the San Joaquin Valley, and she was from a little town called Reedley, which is about 35 miles southeast of Fresno.
Okay.
Right there in Glamour Central, and you know, she dreamed of big things. You know, she when her family in the Depression moved down to Southern California, and she wanted to be a dancer, this and the other, and my mom was a contortionist.
Wow.
Yeah, my mom could do
very cool.
We never knew that growing up until I was about 18 when finally somebody brought over some old photographs of her from like 1932, you know.
Oh my God.
And my mom's bent, you know.
Yeah.
And you're just looking at the mother, you know. And so she worked a little small time vaudeville herself, you know. And so she was always very supportive, actually, of my brother and me. Because you know, it was kind of her lifelong dream was to be on stage, and so you know, when I was a little boy, she tried to get me to do dancing lessons, and I was, of course, really regret it now. You know?
Right? Yeah.
I can't dance for shit.
Oh man, I was talking to somebody the other day about you know, I don't know, like the 50s and maybe in 40s, 50s, whatever. If you were an entertainer, you could sing, dance, tap dance, act. Like those guys, I'm always stunned, man. Anytime you see any of those guys back in the day, they could do all that shit. And I'm the same way where you're just like, I've got one thing.
Yeah.
I can do. And it barely.
Yeah. Bob Hope, Bing Crosby, all those guys.
Yeah.
What do you need me to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wild. I don't even know what the difference was where you're just like, they just have it in them. It's nuts.
Yeah.
I think somebody was talking about Danny Kaye.
It's just training, you know, it's like the Motown acts. You know, Marvin Gaye could certainly sing and he played a couple instruments, or the Temptations could certainly sing. And who would they have? The guy, who was the choreographer? Famous Chauncey Billups, but that's a basketball player.
Right.
I was like, their house choreographer that came in and taught the Temptations, you know, and everybody their steps.
Yeah.
But they sang and they danced. It was all there's a different showbiz now. We're just lazy bums now.
Oh, totally. Oh my God, even more so. It's funny. That's another thing too, is the mystery of not knowing what your parents were like is totally gone with our generation. Like my especially mine's fucking shot. Like, you know, you said you somebody had to bring over a photo from your mom in the 30s. If they never did that, you would have never known. They would have never said anything. Yeah. Now it's like, you know, it's like that Norm Macdonald joke. You're like, you want to see 10,000 photos of my grandfather? It's just like flipping through. Fucking, it's endless. No one's gonna wonder and they're gonna be like, why were you taking so much pictures of food? That's fucking weird. You know, Grandpappy like to eat. It's just stupid, but that's so fucking cool. Do you remember a point in time where like you were, you know, in your career and your parents got to come out and see you and you felt like you'd make like secure, you know what I mean? Like just secure and everything?
You mean financially secure?
No, I mean like
parental approval.
Parental approval, yeah, maybe like talent, yeah.
Oh man, in regards to my mother, you know, my brother and I mean, if we played a high school dance, she was just like, "Oh, yeah,
that's great.
You made it."
Playing a high school dance, you know,
right?
But my mom, we were playing. I know a big night for her. She died relatively young. She died in 1984 when she was.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she was younger than I am now, which.
Right.
But
I was born.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
1984.
You look good.
Hey, thanks.
It would be like 1981. She came. You know, people age differently then.
Yeah.
My mother, you know, again, childhood depression, all that. She and her older sisters definitely looked. They didn't look like we look at all.
Yeah.
Right.
And, so they were, but especially my Aunt Honey and my Aunt Margaret were probably in their late 70s at this point. And they came to the Whiskey A Go-Go. We were playing the Whiskey in 1981. And this was in the days when, people were flying through the air and, beer bottles are flying and spit and fights and, and so my mom and her sisters show up at the Whiskey A Go-Go. And we had told the doorman security guy, look, our mom's coming. She's going to, So they got her. Somebody had taken the table, of course, set aside for him.
Right.
And so then this guy gets up and very gallantly says, would you ladies care to join me at my table? And he sat them down, entertained them, sat with them all night. And they were like, oh, that's my boys up there, Well, your boys are very talented, blah, blah, blah. And then the next day, my mom calls me and says, that was a really good show. And we sat all night with John Travolta.
Wow.
Holy shit.
So,
wow.
I'm not big on Scientology, but I'll give him a pass. He was nice to my mom,
Absolutely, man. Yeah. And way to bury the lead for her. She was like, good show. And by the way, oh my God, phenomenal.
He's a very nice boy, that Travolta.
Wow. That is very sweet. It is kind of, I saw Top Gun, the second movie, and I was like, I know Tom Cruise is a crazy fucking Scientologist, but that guy can make a movie. It was like, I'm like, I guess if he wants to lure people into his cult, go for it. That's a good way to do it.
I never saw the first, so I won't see the second.
Wow, really?
Can I tell you something?
I'm when all those movies came out, I was such, I still am. I'm a snob,
I hear you.
I like, and I'm at that age where I've just had cancer for 2.5 years.
Right,
and I'm at that point where it's like, okay, and I don't have time.
I hear you.
Watch your movie unless, I like John Huston movies,
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Great
like,
movies.
Yeah, I like stuff like that. I like, so in that sort of 80s, 70s, 80s thing when I was more of a drinker and more of a wild man and all that, I never saw Star Wars.
Wow.
I never saw any of the Star Wars. The only time I ever saw Star Wars movies was when I was on tour and on a plane.
Yeah.
See what this is all about, which I don't think is how Lucas intended it to be.
Yeah.
Right.
And probably you probably don't want to watch a movie where people are getting shot down out of the sky while you're in the sky. Just my, like, I don't know.
I never saw E.T. and I never saw Dirty Dance. I never saw Flash Dance. I never saw any of that shit.
Wow. Oh my God.
Gun. It's just like, it doesn't interest me,
I don't blame.
Yeah.
I'll clue you in on the first Top Gun movie. It's just B-roll for jets. Like that. Like, to this day, I couldn't tell you what the plot was. I have no fucking clue. I've seen it a million times. I know it's got a nice soundtrack.
Yeah, there you go.
Jennifer Connelly's hot. Oh, she's fucking gorgeous. Yeah, man.
Oh, yeah.
Still is. And then also back then. Yeah. So that was, but that's it. I don't know. But that's
he does things about endless trains across. Come to watch that show, but I see the ads and it's like, really?
Yes. Absolutely. Oh my God.
As showbiz got to the point where they're on a train, they can't get off. On a train. And I like her. She's a great, and I feel sorry for, I have friends that are actors and actresses. I just feel sorry for them because everybody plays bad gigs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Repeated and repeated and repeated, endlessly.
Yeah. Contracted to do it.
Yeah, and if I play a bad gig in Sioux Falls on a Sunday night, I forget about it 2 days later.
Yeah, you're gone by Monday morning and that's it.
Yeah, and if you do a movie about a talking space chimp trapped on a train in a snowstorm, you're living with that.
How did you know that I was writing that one? I didn't know. I gotta cross that off my list. I can't do that movie anymore.
Research on you, John.
So what did you do during the if you're not binging or rewatching movies? What were you doing during lockdown and stuff? Did you because
I was doing chemotherapy and radiation.
that'll take up some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do it.
It was the best time. To paraphrase Charles Dickens, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Yeah.
The best time to be sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I couldn't play gigs. So okay, let's have cancer now.
Absolutely.
And then it was the worst time, because I had cancer. And
right. You look good, dude.
And complete remission now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I don't want to use that word.
I hear you. Knock on wood, right? I hear you.
It could be in me now.
Sure.
You never know.
Yeah.
I was declared cancer-free last year, and then, and this is true, literally a month later, they were telling me I had a year to live.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it gets
wild, man.
This is the shit for the memoir. It's not going to be punk rock this or blues that. It's going to be here's what the medical industry does. But make a long story short, they diagnosed one thing correctly, had returned, and they misdiagnosed another thing. So then they made me do 4 months of chemotherapy for a cancer that I didn't have.
Oh my God!
Shit. And that's when I decided to I grow my hair out long, partially as a pandemic thing, partially as a fuck you cancer thing.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Then they said, well, you're going to lose your hair. And I was like, well, we're not really sure that I have this other cancer that's going to, well, we think it's best that you do it and you're going to lose your hair. And I was just like, fuck you, I am not.
Right.
And I'd lost some, but no. But I did 4 months of chemo for a cancer I didn't have. So
wow.
So when you say in remission,
yeah.
Say that,
it's a fight every day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had 3 people that really helped me through my cancer shit. One was my sister, who is a cancer survivor, twice breast cancer, and she runs therapy groups for cancer patients and survivors and this and the other. And then there was a woman named well, I won't say her name, but she had exactly what I had, which was stage 4 colorectal that had metastasized into other parts of the body. Wow. And then they had told her, make out your will. And then she had gone through certain treatments with this great doctor, and she was recovered and she was fine. And then my other third person was a close friend of mine named Stanley Wyckoff, who was an interesting songwriter, and he had survived stomach cancer like 10 years before. And so they were the people that were like, okay, they're going to tell you this, you want to do that, if they tell you this, do this and do this,
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
This is bullshit. This is what you want to do.
Wow.
If they tell you this, do exactly what they say, don't Google this, don't Google it.
Yeah.
And so those are like my 3 rock of Gibraltars. And so then when I was told earlier this year, that was about 2.5 months ago, that I was cancer free finally, officially. Nice. And then the woman who had exactly what I had, who was in remission, and it was 4.5 years in remission, hers came back.
Oh man.
Stanley, literally the next day, he died.
Oh my goodness.
So sorry to hear that.
Returned, and he died. And they come back late. They diagnosed it like a month before. So I don't, you just kind of like
stay on the fence. Yeah.
Yeah. The other day I got in my car and I had on the Sirius radio, and it was the Mojo Nixon show. And I turn on, and Mojo's an old friend and all that.
Oh, nice.
And I turn on the radio and I could hear one of my songs fading out. And then Mojo comes on as soon as I'm in the car. And this was after the Rolling Stone little article had come out about me and cancer. And so then Mojo was like, Dave Alvin, kick cancer's ass. I'm like, say that. We don't want cancer to know that I kicked its ass. And we're just going to pray to whatever powers the universe has that It doesn't come back, but it could be back now. I don't know.
Right.
And so I feel great, and
you look great.
Yeah, you sound good, dude.
Without sounding corny, I'm really supposed to be dead. And before the reason they found out I had cancer was I went in somewhere out on the road. I got sepsis.
Oh,
and
wow.
I refused to go to the hospital for that because I just figured it was something that'll pass.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it almost killed me. And I wound up in the hospital for like 9 days with that. And that's how they found the cancer, blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
Sepsis should have killed me. The cancer should have killed me. And so without sounding too corny, now even the shitty days are great.
Yeah.
They really are. I am that guy now. Come on. Come on. Let's go swimming down the swimming pool.
Yeah.
It's like flowers. Oh, look at those. Man, I always thought those are pretty, but man, those are really fucking pretty,
Yeah.
And so yeah, I've got these shows coming up, and it's kind of like a way of me testing what I'm physically capable of after surgery, 3 different surgeries and 2 rounds of chemotherapy and 1 round of radiation and all that kind of jazz. But it's also, hey, these could be the last ones.
Yeah.
And if COVID doesn't screw everything up and fuck it up, and
exactly.
But as you were worried about, but yeah, it's really like every fucking note now matters.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you wound up appreciating during certain life events, but also the same thing with like COVID, like having all that shit taken away. I mean, it just takes that one time for something that you've taken advantage of to kind of not be there for a little bit. And you're like, holy shit, I need to treasure every minute of this.
Yeah. Even the back gigs,
You said you were a fan of writer. Do you like Kurt Vonnegut?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a great quote by him. I have it. I keep it on the bag that I use to travel with all over the place. I had it engraved on this leather duffel bag that I have. And it's a great quote, man. It's what you were talking about. And it's I urge you to notice when you're happy and exclaim or murmur or think at some point, if this isn't nice, I don't know what is.
Yeah, exactly.
I try to think about that all the time.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you were just saying.
Yeah, he had not that long before he died, maybe about 2 years or so before he died.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm lighting this in tribute to Vonnegut.
Very nice. Love it.
He was on a TV show and he lit up a cigarette and he said, I'm suing the cigarette corporations, the tobacco corporations. And the host was, oh, that's great. That's great. That's wonderful. He goes, yeah, I've been smoking since I was 15 years old, and now I'm 84 years old. And so I'm suing the tobacco companies. And the guy said, that's great. What are you suing them for? He says, because I'm not dead yet. Right here. And I'm not dead. I'd like to be dead. Thank you. He had a wonderful, nice, dark sense of humor.
Yeah, he did. Oh, that's so great. I never knew that. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
What would you?
Stewart, actually. So
it was the Daily Show.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I remember that interview. I thought that sounded familiar.
Yeah.
I was just at the premiere of the Carlin documentary, the George Carlin one. I don't know if you saw that yet.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, so good. And they mentioned Vonnegut. Jon Stewart mentioned Vonnegut in that because he said the two of them were very much alike, and they're kind of almost like pragmatic nihilism. You know what I mean? Where they were just like, what you saw is what you get. They had an optimism about. They were just disappointed in the world.
Yeah.
And it's crazy.
I think, for different reasons.
Yeah.
But for different roads led them to the same place.
Absolutely.
Vonnegut always kind of reminded me of my old man.
Nice.
My man was in the Signal Corps in World War II.
Wow.
And he'd been in North Africa. He'd been at D-Day. He'd been in at Battle of Bulge, and he was at the liberation of Dachau.
Wow.
And so his expectations for humanity were that high, what they were capable of. And when we were kids, he would tell us stories about Dachau and about how you could smell it 5 miles away.
Wow.
They were marching to, they were told, you're going to this place, be prepared. And he said, yeah, you could smell it. And he said, so whenever the people in the town of Dachau would say, oh, we had no idea what was going on, he said, they're full of shit.
Yeah.
It didn't smell like a slaughterhouse.
Right.
It smelled like what it smelled like.
Good
And
Lord.
And then, you know, when he got back from the war, you know, one thing led to another, and he became a union organizer for his professional career. So in some ways, in the same way as Vonnegut and even Carlin, kept his idealism in the pragmatic sense.
Yeah.
Pragmatic nihilism. I prefer, you know, optimistic pessimist or pessimistic optimist.
Yeah, that's better.
But my old man would be like, you know, like when I would hear Carlin, especially some of the later period stuff, was, oh, the old man's been hitting the vodka again.
That's great. You were talking a little earlier about you know, going solo and doing that kind of stuff for the first time or whatever, but you're also like widely known for your collaborations. Do you feel yourself as more of a collaborative person? Do you enjoy being among the company of other talented people who are writing music and playing music, or do you like to be by yourself?
No, I like being around people. You know, I'm pretty shy, and so playing music is a way of not being shy. You know,
nice.
Or doing podcasts is a way of not being shy.
Yeah, that's a good.
If I had my choice, I'd be, you know, holed up somewhere hiding. And so yeah, no, because I'm self-taught. I never took guitar lessons per se. When I was a little kid, you know, my brother would always have you know, from the time my brother was like 13, he had a great band. Always had great musicians. And where I grew up in Downey, in those days, not in yours, in those days, it was full of great musicians, kid musicians.
Right.
There were always these older guys that were great guitar players. So I was always intimidated, and but they'd leave the room, and I'd pick up their guitar, and like I'd be looking when they're playing, I'd looking at their fingers. What's he doing there? And then they'd leave, and then of course I'd grab the guitar.
Oh, nice, man.
And so it wasn't until I was like 17, 18 that I really tried to be a guitar player. And I didn't really succeed until around 1994. And, but because I'm self-taught, the way I learn things is from other musicians.
Right.
Like one of my dearest friends is one of the world's greatest musicians, is a guy named Greg Lease, Leissz. And Greg, you will notice is played on every record that's been made in the past 20 years.
Wow.
And he grew up near me and all that. And I've learned a billion things from playing with Greg. He produced my Downey California record, and he was in my first solo band. But he's out on tour right now with Jackson Brown. Hey, Greg. Hey, Jackson. How you guys doing?
Oh, nice.
And but from Greg, I learned a lot about suspension chords, all this stuff that you wouldn't learn. And so you pick up little things here and there from every musician or singer or songwriter that if you co-write with somebody, sometimes I want to co-write with someone just to figure out, how do you do it?
Yeah.
Because every songwriter writes differently. Everybody's got a different process. So it's like, well, I've got my weird little process. What's yours?
Right.
And and the same with musicians. You know, how do you play that?
Yeah.
Oh, how you go? Oh, I get it. I played it. Oh, I was wrong. You know, like a couple of weeks back, I did my first gig. It was a surprise, unannounced thing over at this place in Santa Monica called McCabe's, and it was with Rick Holmstrom and Gregory Boaz and Steve McGowan, who are Mavis Staples' band. Rick is one of my favorite guitar players, and he and I talked for years about, we got to play together one of these days. So he's doing a residency over at McCabe's, and he said, why don't you come down and, you know, be Dave Alvin? And I was like, well, I think I can do it, you know.
Yeah.
I haven't played, you know, in 2.5 years. I've got neuropathy in my hands and feet from the chemotherapy, but I'm going to give it a shot. And so doing stuff like that, and we played for an hour and a half, you know, and that's how I learned. And so, I like collaborating with people. You know, when I sit down to seriously write songs, I like to do it alone, with the exception of one or two other people that I've co-written with over the years.
Right.
But playing music, it's to me, it's a group thing, you know, like, I don't like, for example, I like drummers that make a lot of noise.
Nice.
Or especially in blues and and country music, stuff like that, they don't.
Right.
Because it's all about, in blues, particularly like for guitar players or harmonic players, it's all about the guitar player, the harmonica player.
Mm-hmm.
So you just keep time. When country music, the same thing. You know, like the world's most boring job would be the drummer in junior band. It's just
right.
Look, you're playing drums. Cover up my mistakes, okay? I'm gonna go out on the edge. I don't know if I'm coming back. But thanks, I appreciate it. And so I've been really blessed in that. In the Blasters, we had a drummer named Bill Bateman, and Bill was great at covering my mistakes. When I joined X, DJ Bonebreak was the drummer, or is the drummer, and DJ's excellent at covering mistakes. And then in my own bands, for years I had a guy named Bobby Lloyd Hicks, and Bobby Lloyd, his mistakes were so much grander than mine that we worked beautifully together. And
Wow.
then the current drummer is a great drummer named Lisa Pankratz, and she knows not only how to play drums like a pro, but she knows when I'm going to go haywire and how to go there with me. And that's what I love. So it's all about collaboration. It's all about making, the whole better than the parts.
That's great, man. I love that.
I actually have a question because John usually asks this, so I want to just ask this for
I know
him.
you're gonna, yeah.
Yeah, when you write your song, do you hear melody first, or do you do the words or lyrics first?
I'll take them anyway.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay.
It's some come all at the same time. Some songs, a couple of my best songs came when I was walking to get a hamburger. It was my car. Yeah. And so, but that's rare.
Mm-hmm.
But it does happen. And there are songs that I'm proud of that took me 3 months of just writing lyrics with no melody, and then trying to figure out, well, what melody goes with this?
Right.
Other songs, one or two. One of my more famous songs was one of the earliest songs I ever wrote was a thing called Marie Marie. And I was laying in bed, and this melody came in my head, and I grabbed the guitar and I had no idea what it's about. And the next day and this is early on, I think it was the 4th song I ever wrote. And the next day we had blaster rehearsal, and I had 20 minutes before we were leaving, and I sat down and just wrote the lyrics.
Nice.
Wow.
So it but then others take 4 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've got some things, up here that I don't know when they'll be released,
Yeah.
Awesome.
Creativity is so weird. It doesn't make any sense sometimes because there's like, it'll be the same thing. I could write like, a 20-minute thing that sounds like me, is exactly how I want it to sound. And it's really funny, and I can go out and do it. And then I'll have one joke that will not work for like 6 fucking years, no matter how much, I'll like, and then all of a sudden it'll just click. And I don't even know what it was. It was so obvious, and I don't understand what my brain has been doing for the last. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but it is weird.
Yeah, creativity is we all have, everybody approaches it slightly differently, because in comedy writing and in songwriting, the similarity is there's no blueprint.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're building a house, you can't start with the roof.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You got to start with the foundation, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But in songwriting, you can start with the roof. And hey, you know what? I got a great punchline.
Yep.
What the fuck is the setup?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So there's no rules in what we do. And that's also the intimidating and difficult part is you would think it's easy because there's no rules. But it's actually more difficult because, like I said, I like to co-write sometimes with people because I want to see how do you do it.
Yes.
You start with the foundation. Oh, how dull.
Right.
I start with the windows.
Right.
Yeah.
It's relieving when you figure out how other people do it too, because sometimes in your brain there's like a block where you're like, no. I bet you this guy is magic. And and they must do this weird setup, and they probably got some whatever, and then you find out that they're just as bizarre as you are, and they've got a different technique, and it's freeing. It's so weird.
Yeah, I have friends, songwriter pals that write every day.
Mm-hmm.
And they write a shitty song every day, and they'll say it. Yeah, I wrote a shitty song today. I'm gonna write a shitty song tomorrow, and the next one will be great though.
Yeah,
and they may be right. I don't know. I don't do that. when I do write songs, I tend to go into songwriting mode. I go to that part of my brain that's the pure, more open, less censored part of my brain, and just, papers go everywhere. There's always a guitar nearby. If I'm with my girlfriend Mary, or if I'm whomever I'm with, I'm not really there. I'm songwriter brain. I'm just like, and people around me get pissed off because I'm rhyming everything. I'll be walking around going, yeah, moon, June, spoon, croon, tune, balloon. Balloon's not a word, is it? Balloon? And there was a great quote. This is sort of applicable. It was an interchange between, the two best modern songwriters, Leonard Cohen and Bob Dylan. And apparently they were pals, sure, why not?
Right.
And very different cats though. And Bob Dylan asked Leonard Cohen, how long did it take you to write Hallelujah? And Leonard said, 8 years. And then he said, how long did it take you to write, we'll say like a Rolling Stone? Bob, about 20 minutes. And I don't think either one is better than the other.
Yeah.
It's just two extremely different ways of doing it. And I lean more towards Leonard in regards of it. Sometimes with my songs, it takes years.
Yeah. I love that you said you thought of one while walking down the street, like going to get a hamburger or whatever, because I've done that where like I love to bike, and for some reason, and it must be like an ADD brain thing where if I'm doing something else, my brain will automatically think. So when I'm biking, I'll think of like anything, create like funny shit, like whatever it is, my brain's just running. But I have had to stop biking, and it could have been like on a high, you know what I mean? And like cars are like, boom, boom. I'm just like, and people just look at me like I'm nuts because I just stopped, in the middle of a street. Like
you have to write everything. If a joke comes into your head or a setup, do you have to stop and write it down, or you can keep percolating it in your skull for an hour or two?
It depends on how long I know I'm going to be out. So at this point in the game, I understand that like, okay, if I'm within the vicinity of a notepad and I get somewhere to write it down within like that hour, I'm pretty good. Yeah. But I know if I'm going to be out longer than that, if I don't get it down, it's like the Roadrunner in the cartoon when he meeps and then pisses off, and then there's a fucking cloud of smoke, and you're like, where did it go? It was right here. That's what it's like.
Yeah. Well, I got the best and worst piece of songwriting advice ever when I was very young. Was from a great blues singer by the name of Big Joe Turner. And the boss of the blues, and my brother Phil and I followed him around, starting from when I was about 13, 14 years old. My brother was like 15, 16. We followed him from gig to gig, just like, because he lived out here, and he was generous and gregarious and open to us, and he was kind of like interested in us. He was, why you two guys, anyway. And so when I was about 14, I was walking home from school, and it was about 3 miles, and I'm walking home, and in that process of walking home, I wrote a song for Big Joe Turner, down to the horn arrangements, down to everything, Wow. I just walked along. Oh man, this is great. I'm gonna be a songwriter, blah, blah, blah. And then, so the next time, like a week or so later, I saw Big Joe. I went up and said, Big Joe, I wrote a song for you. And he looked down from his magisterial heights and he said, how does it go? And I was like, and then he gave me this advice, which was, well, if you can't remember, it ain't worth shit to begin with. Unfortunately, have lived with that. We're a lot of songwriters. Some guys have got, and gals have got home studios, where, wait a second. I think I thought of the right bass note. And then they'll run across the room. And I've written with people like that, and I get bored. Yeah. I'm just like, oh, yeah, well, I thought we were writing a song. We're doing a track, Yeah. And there's other people, like I said, if they have anything, they've always got the pad and paper and they're writing down their ideas, where I keep everything up in here.
Yeah.
And it's like, like I said, it's the best advice. It's the worst advice.
Yeah.
I would have written 800 more songs had I not listened to Big Joe. But on the other hand, I think I wrote some good ones because by the time I finally sat down and said, okay, how does Can California go?
Right.
I already figured it out in my head.
Yeah.
And then once you open up those receptors, and here's where we get new age guys.
Mm-hmm.
Once you open up your brain to the receptors, then songs, jokes, whatever, thoughts, everything comes in, and you don't have that board of teenage censors up there going, oh, that's really weird. Why do you like jazz? Why do you like jazz? I don't. Jazz is stupid. Why do you like, and you can let yourself all of that stuff come in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do whatever you want.
It's so true, man. Because even when like the stuff that only makes it is the stuff that is the funniest for me too. Like that's what I'll like. Because when I'm on stage, I've got my jokes that I definitely, I've worked on. I know what I'm going to say, but I like to work very freeform too, because that's when I come up with stuff. But the only thing I remember from ad libs or kind of working with the audience is the funniest shit. I'll find will seep its way back in.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, the stuff that I do write down, I will look at like an hour later and go, that's the dumbest fucking thing. I can't believe I stopped traffic for that.
Yeah. Well, that's like writing drunk. Writing drunk or high. I wrote back in the 80s. There was a great songwriter named Peter Case, and Peter had a band called the Plimsouls back in those days. And I love the Plimsouls, and I love Peter to this day, and he's one of our best songwriters. But we only sat down and tried to write once, and this is back in the bad days, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we were at the Whiskey A Go Go or something, and I was, hey man, let's go write a song. Okay. And Peter in those days lived up in Laurel Canyon. So we go up to this place in little shack in Laurel Canyon, and we've got a case of beer, and Peter's got a bunch of speed. And so drinking beer, we're, snorting speed, and we're writing page after page. And yeah, is it? And then, the next day at about 4 p.m, you wake up, you're really hungover, you feel terrible. Peter calls me up and goes, man, I looked at everything we got, and it's shit. I know, man. So you got to be sober, but you have to be open. I think some creative people take drugs to open up those receptors and cut off negative voices of school teachers saying, "Why do you want to be a songwriter? That's go change tires for a living."
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You get voices. Sometimes I guess with drugs or alcohol, but for me it's always been doing it. Not that I didn't indulge in those things, but writing, you got to be kind of serious about it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Which is a great segue. We have so many questions from the audience. We have a bunch of fans that were out there. One is a good friend of the show, Scott, and he said he's from South Bend, Indiana, as well. And he has a couple comments. He said, "Congrats to Dave for holding the record for mentioning cigarettes the most times during songwriting, including Joe Jackson." And he also said,
"Tom Waits hold the record."
Tom Waits might.
Yeah,
that's right. It's true. And then he said he'd love to hear the story behind the song "Out of Control."
The guy from South Bend.
Yeah, that was his question. The guy from South Bend asked that.
Yeah, my cousin Greg Shazevsky. Out there in South Bend. That's a song about, it's about a few people, 2 people really, condensed into one. And one was a family member who worked at the slag pit and at the Fontana steel plant. My old man was an organizer for the Steelworkers Union. So I spent time in Fontana because the people outside of Southern California and California in general don't know that we used to be a big steel state, and there were steel mills all over California, and the Fontana plant was huge, and then it was sort of the same as in Pennsylvania or something. It was the whole town was the Bethlehem steel plant, right? And or what was it? No, it wasn't. No, it was a Kaiser, and when they closed down the steel mill down there, that was it for the town. And now the town is, it's all just tract homes where there used to be a blast furnace and the slag heap. But it for like 20 some years, it just fucked over the economy of that whole area. and it left that area of California. It's pretty meth addled, it's pretty much meth country.
Right.
And so I always intro that song as being, the existentialist blues, because that's really what it is, and so people, when you take away people's livelihoods and the reasons, like, well, my old man worked in that steel mill, I guess I'm gonna,
right.
And
Yeah.
my brother did for a while. My brother Phil worked in it for a while, and you take that away, and if you don't give them something else, for a lot of people are motivated enough to say, okay, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to go to Las Vegas and become a gambler, or I'll become a
crap stealer.
Yeah. I'll become a dancer, whatever your dream are. But a lot of people are left behind, and that song's sort of about the people that are left behind in the wake of economic. Well, we don't want to get too heavy here.
No,
listen, it's all good.
That's beautiful, man.
Dance to it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Hope that
That's
answers.
great.
Yeah, that was a great question. And then Tangled Up in Blue 1984 asks, he's from Ohio, learned of Dave through following Bob Dylan and Justified. Did that exposure from them help your career?
Yeah, sure. Yes, sir.
See, that was a much easier one.
Yeah.
No, it certainly did. Justified, anytime, they had come to me, the producer / writer had come to me and said, hey, you have a song for us? And yeah, I kind of did. I had a thing laying around, and I just put it together and cut it. And then they said, oh, we're going to put it in the show. So then not only they put it in the show, they decided, oh, we're going to have Dave sing it. And then out of the blue, Timothy Oliphant, and I forget the actress's name, they started riffing on my name. Oh, honey, but Dave Alvin's going to start playing. I'm like,
nice.
I didn't pay him a cent, man. I didn't. So it was really nice to have, you can't beat that kind of thing. And then, it's for acts like me, it's really difficult to get TV exposure.
Yeah.
Because I was never famous enough to be an oldies act, and I was never. I'm not cute enough to be, that kind of act, And I'm not Harry Styles or anything.
You could wear a skirt. I could see you in a skirt.
Well, we have the same stylist. I'm
yeah.
Right now, and so to get on TV is really big, and that was a really nice, boost to the careers.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. And Timothy Oliphant seems like a sweetheart of a guy. Like I don't know him, but he seems like a really nice guy.
Timothy Oliphant? Yeah. He seems like it to me. I've met him a couple of times, and
great actor.
Unjustified. What can I say?
Yeah.
Tangled actually
friends with Ian McShane. Ian and Timothy were in Deadwood together.
Yeah, great. They were great together in Deadwood.
Yeah, they were, and so I feel like I know Timothy Oliphant more through Ian McShane than I do through Justified.
Oh, that was a great fucking show. That show could have gone on forever.
What, Deadwood or Justified?
Deadwood, both. Well, Justified too, but Deadwood was like one of the first like shows of that genre that I really got hooked into.
Yeah, it was great. Ian's such a master.
Oh God, the best. So fucking good.
For sure. Tangled actually also said the song "Boss of the Blues" is phenomenal lyrical masterpiece. How true are the events of the story?
100% entirely true.
Nice.
Wow. That's a cool answer, right?
Yeah.
Greg Mira said, hey, Dave, one of your brothers from Downey here. Dave is a legend.
See you, Chris and Pitts.
Nice.
There you go. And then, as a writer, how odd is it to see artists like Dwight Yoakam and John Doe hit big with his songs Long White Cadillac and 4th of July? Additionally, who cover song does Dave find to be a great? Blue Wing by Tom Russell.
Who covers song? Blue Wing is one of my favorite songs. It's written by a guy I've co-written a lot of songs with, a great songwriter named Tom Russell. Nice. I wish I had co-written Blue Wing. I wish I'd written Blue Wing, and I recorded it on my King California record. so people tend to think I wrote it because it's on my record, and sometimes I don't tell them I did.
That's great. That's awesome.
And Cyborg Cassowary he said, just listen to your song Peace. It's so good. Starting to believe peace is not necessarily pacifism, it's nonviolence. According to Nonviolence by Mark Kalansky, Jesus Christ pronounced that pacifism is turning the other cheek, while nonviolence is acting. Initial intakes. Interesting.
Well, I didn't write that. That was a Willie Dixon song, the great blues songwriter who was a friend of mine. And,
wow.
And so, yeah, I did a version. I love that song. And we don't. Do we want to get theological here?
Sure, whatever you want to do.
You can take it wherever you want to take it. We're open to everything.
Yeah.
Do we want to? Yeah, I think that I think we're as a race, as a human race, we're too quick to violence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The smarter we get, the more we can back off from it. But then there are times when there are, I've been in enough bar rooms to know that there are bullies.
Yeah.
And you don't, to find bullies, you don't have to go far,
Right.
Yeah.
So there are some guys that's all they understand. And so, yeah, it is kind of, I support nonviolence over violence, but there are times when there are bullies, and sometimes those bullies run countries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Adolf Hitler, or Stalin, or
Putin.
Yeah, sure,
absolutely.
So but on the other hand, you gotta, not everybody is like that. And
right.
Yeah, it's true. There's a lot of good out there.
Yeah.
John hates that I'm such an optimist.
No, I'm not. I don't hate that you're an optimist. I respect it. I like it.
I know you just don't believe me. I get it. Simon Caswell says, "Can one write lyrics like Ernest Hemingway, look at them the next morning, and then decide to throw them away?"
If they were anything like Ernest Hemingway, you wouldn't throw them away.
That's a good answer.
Great response.
Good answer.
Tangle said, "What made you choose to put the kick-ass Rosa Parks line back into the song Sit Down that was originally cut out?"
Because Willie Dixon had told me that the record label, said, you may not want to put that in there. Back in whatever year, if he cut it with Otis Rush, he wrote it and he produced the session. Yeah. And, years later, when I knew Willie a bit, in the 80s, he told me about that line. Mm-hmm. And so when I recorded the song with my brother, I was like, well, let's put it back in.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah. Always go against the record label. It's a good piece of advice.
At this point, it's that controversial, but I guess in 1957,
right?
Yeah,
the guys at Cobra Records thought, well, we're going to lose a lot of airplay, and
right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just a lot of love from everybody else too, checking in from all over. We have them from all over, like the globe, which is great, right?
Jerry.
Yeah, pleasure, Terry.
St. Louis, awesome.
Yeah.
Great. I want to thank you for coming on, dude, because it's been a blast talking to you.
Thank you.
I've got three questions that we ask every guest that's on the show. First question is, if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self, what piece of advice would you give yourself that would help you today?
That music business thing.
Love it. Second question is, what had to end in your life, good or bad, that led you to where you are today?
What had to end?
Yeah, good or bad.
My academic career.
Nice.
That was a good answer. That's a really good answer.
Yeah, you mentioned that before, that it was kind of scattered, like a choppy one. Like, was it? Did you drop out, go back, drop out, go back? What was the?
I'm not the brightest bulb in the chandelier, John. And I especially wasn't in those days when I drank a lot. Going back to talk about imitating Charles Bukowski or people of that sort.
Right.
Yeah.
And, so I may have thought I was the smartest guy in the world. Maybe I wasn't.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I understand.
Can I hit him with the third question? So
Yeah, I figured that I was like this. I was rewording it in my head.
If we were in a
Had
genuine
some trouble
dystopia,
with this last question.
right? If we're in a genuine dystopia, right, and everything's going crazy in the world, how do you see yourself spending your time in it? If there's a zombie apocalypse, a meteor heading towards the Earth, tidal wave overtaking everything, how do you want to see yourself going through it?
Smoking.
Great answer.
Perfect. Beautiful.
That was a great answer.
Awesome. Thank you so much
man.
for coming on, man. I love talking to you. Seriously, it's been great.
Sorry if I talk too much, and we'll see you down the road, I hope.
Never. It was such a pleasure, and we can't wait. Hopefully, you're going to be in the area. We'll definitely come check you out. I'm looking forward to it.
Peace out, man.
Thanks so much, man. Have a great one.
Bye, John.
Dystopia Tonight.